Christ. That's what being a Christian is. And Paul wants to make sure everybody knows he has never baptized anyone into his name, because that would mean that he's looking for a following. But another thing that's interesting to me is he doesn't ever express anything positive towards his own fan club. I mean, wouldn't you think that at least he would say to these people, hey, look, I'm flattered that I'm your favorite. I really appreciate the affirmation. I really appreciate that you like me better than you like Peter. But come on, guys. I'm just a man. And, Peter's just a man. And Apollos is just a man. He doesn't even deal with that because he recognizes that the thing happening in Corinth is far deeper than simply someone saying they like Paul as a preacher better than they like Peter as a preacher. And so he wants to get at the very heart of this whole issue and make them think about what is actually at stake. And so he talks about crucifixion, which to this Greek culture was a horrendous thing. It was total humiliation of the person crucified. Rather than heroic, rather than being based upon personal pride and preference and focused on man, crucifixion strips all the pride away and brings the person's mind right back to humility and brokenness. Because that's what it took for us to be reconciled with God, was Christ submitting himself to humility and to brokenness on the cross. And so, where is this whole thing of my favorite guy, and this is the guy that is better than everybody else, when you think of that? And so Paul challenges them to think more clearly about this. So I think really a core issue of life and a core issue they were facing was, where do we find our identity? Where do we find something inside to give us a sense of value and affirmation? And I think in our culture today, it's almost a false theology, the idea that we have to be affirmed and we have to be valued by others. And it's not a bad thing, and we do want to give affirmation to others, but we don't want to be needy of affirmation ourselves. We don't want to live where I am in such need of affirmation from other people because I am so stinking insecure that if someone doesn't show me their approval, then I assume that they disapprove of me. Or if I do something and no one comments on it, that then I have been devalued somehow. That's wounding in my own heart that needs to be healed. And the healing comes as we recognize that we have some squishy spots like that deep inside, and that the affirmation of other people is secondary to God's affirmation in our lives. The affirmation and approval of other people is secondary to Jesus, into whom I was baptized, into whom I came when I put faith in Christ. He's my Lord, He's my King, am I pleasing Him? I mean, we all have these squishy spots, don't we? Have you ever walked into a room of people and you didn't know anybody there, and no one came up to you, and you weren't sure whether you were supposed to walk over to the desk and sign your name down, or sign in, or whether you were supposed to just sit down in a chair and wait your turn, and nobody comes to you, and there are people milling around. And have you ever been there? I can stand up here and talk and not really be all that nervous most of the time. Sometimes I am, but you put me in that situation, I'll have butterflies. Do you ever walk away from a conversation with a group of people and think, what an idiot, why did I say that? I'm sure they're all right now thinking what a fool I am. I have that. I walk away from half my conversations second guessing things I said, or why did I do that? And boy, I wish I just kept my mouth shut. We all struggle with those things, but the solution to them is not becoming perfect. It's not always becoming a better conversationalist. And that doesn't hurt, but that's not going to heal the need in my heart for the approval of others. And so what Paul is doing here is he's trying to redirect them back to the idea that they really don't need this hero. In fact, that hero is going to interfere with having an intimate and direct relationship with Jesus Christ, which is the need. And so the next time you're in a situation where you feel insecure, or where you're wondering what someone else thinks of you, or you're not sure what you should say or do next, and you're feeling uncomfortable, just ask yourself this question: who is this person? Or who are these people? And then ask this question: were any of them crucified for me? Were any of them crucified for me? And then ask the question: who was crucified for me? And then ask the question: what does he want me to do in this situation? How does he want me to interact? Does he really care if I look a little foolish or not? Is that really a big deal? Because once again, it's kind of like part of life. Can I get used to maybe once in a while feeling foolish or doing something that doesn't fit, or is awkward socially, or is awkward relationally? Can I get used to that and just say, you know what, life is not perfect, and Jesus, I want to do what you want me to do in this situation. And I even believe that you're so great you can use me in spite of some of the dumb things I say and do. And so then we have at the foundational level this relational thing going on with God, where I don't need a hero to tie into. I've got Jesus. He's my hero. He's the one who's crucified for me. He's the one who rose from the dead. He's the one I'm following. And on a daily basis, the more we can get into this type of thinking on a daily basis, Lord, what do you want me to do? Lord, here's this room full of people. How do you want me to interact with them? When we can start to think that way, then it relieves and it brings healing to those spots inside where we need the approval of others. Well, then he goes on, and Paul talks about his gifting, and that's a crucial part of this whole thing. And third point is love and serve others through your God-given gifts. He says, Christ didn't send me to baptize. So Paul knew he was sent. He knew who sent him, and he knew what he was sent for. And that was to preach the gospel. And the gospel message is this: that Jesus Christ was the fulfillment of God's promises to the world. That God promised that he would bring a way for us to be freed from the guilt of sin and the power of sin in our lives. And Jesus hanging on the cross, Jesus being crucified, he took our sin on himself. He paid for our sin. He rose from the dead. And now when we put faith in him, we come into him. It's as the soldiers are pledging themselves to Caesar, we come into Jesus. And we are forgiven for every wrong thing we've ever done. His power is released in our lives so that we can begin the process of spiritual growth and living a new life. And Paul says that's what he was brought here to preach. And he knows the methodology too, which was not relying on human words, but relying on God's power. So Paul brought this message in a countercultural manner. And he actually is saying here that if he says this next, so I'll wait till we get to that. But if the gospel's success relies on its eloquence, or the eloquence of the speaker, then it is just one message among a sea of messages. But if the gospel message, when presented simply and clearly within the cultural context, that means you're going to have to use words and illustrations that fit Latin America or Africa, not North America. But when it's communicated clearly and simply within the cultural context, there is power released through the message of the gospel. And Paul wanted to rely on that power, not upon eloquence. And so just to run through these last verses, he really repeats himself a couple times. And so I've already said a lot of this, but the next point is we need to rest our hearts in the power and wisdom of God. And he does say that there are times that the message of the cross can appear to be foolish. Now, if you really understand the full message, there's a logic to it and a consistency to it that explains everything in life. And if you were here to hear Bill Jackson, you heard that. But there are times that culturally, the people who hear it shake their heads and say, that is the dumbest thing I ever heard. To the Greeks, to them, why would God